Today we're going to talk a lot about the SBAC in 11th grade and how to get our students ready for that. And we also have some intervention tools to share. Before we jump into that, just a little bit about the company. We are a supplemental resource and we're really effective with targeted intervention, especially with providing content that is aligned to the SBAC in terms of academic language, rigor, response types. We have a plethora of resources in that space and some really great strategic ways to help close learning gaps and raise student achievement. And this is just an example of what it would look like in our system. Having access to those resources, you always have your finger on the pulse of student progress towards SBAC success. And one report you could get is like pre and post test data. Compton Unified is a local district that has been very successful at using Next Gen Math. This is their district-wide data, and as you can see, the no data obviously is the pandemic. Coming out of the pandemic, just like the rest of California, there were some dips in math SBAC achievement. However, throughout the years, consistent use of Next Gen Math and implementation has given district-wide the growth of 9 percentage points, and Compton is getting quite a bit of press about their very impressive results in the area of math. And superintendent has done testimonials for us and really believes Next Gen Math is an important part of that growth. So just some self-reflection for you. Can you share what are some of the biggest challenges that you face with preparing students for math CASP success? And if you could just drop those responses in the chat. And of course, we would just love to hear from you if you want to unmute and share your response. And then we will see if we can address some of those challenges. So I'm going to just go ahead and keep moving forward here. We're going to talk in detail about building supports for SBAC readiness in 11th grade, and in particular, looking at your integrated math 1 through 3 or your traditional pathways and how that content is going to be tested on the 11th grade claim 1 of the blueprint. So I'm going to turn this over to Joost de Moos, our content expert, to talk a little bit more in detail about. Joost?
All right, thank you, Erin. And so this right here might be familiar to many of you. This is the Smarter Balance blueprint. It is green. I'm going to refer to this as the green print. And what this is, it's the targets. These are the targets for grade 11 that are broken down by, and you'll see on the left, priority clusters and supporting clusters. One of the mysteries of this document, especially if you're outside of math as a content expert, is what do these assessment targets mean? And not only is it grade 11, but it's 3 years of mathematics that's being assessed in 1 year in grade 11. And so what we've done is that we took a deep dive into this document and made sense of it in terms of 2 pathways. One is, where do these targets or these clusters of content or clusters of standards, where do they show up in terms of a traditional pathway or an integrated math pathway? So as this was an observation that we made, in that there's clearly distinctions as to which standards show up in either pathway. So from here, we took a deeper dive and went and focused on the go ahead and click through those. As we're highlighting these different text boxes throughout, there are clearly different columns, different information in each one of them. But really, to point out these 2 big ideas here is that there are priority clusters and supporting clusters. Where are you going to spend most of your time, and which is your priority? And then what we've added, which course will you spend most of your time providing instruction to the kids. And what we've seen in some of my conversations I've had with some curriculum administrators is that you might be a content expert outside of mathematics. And so how do you make sense of it? And including those that are content experts in math appreciate this. So for instance, this first line, it says interpret the structure of expressions. We know that that cluster of content resides in the traditional pathway in Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and also integrated math 1, 2, and 3. The blue pop-up that you see there is highlighting where this is showing up in terms of the integrated pathway. Don't worry, I'm going to show you traditional in a moment, but you can see how SSE1 shows up in both Math 1, Math 2, and Math 3, which makes a lot of sense because integrated Math 1 is about linear equations, linear and quadratic. Math 2 is emphasizing the polynomial and rational expressions as a whole. And the same thing with Math 3 is focusing on exponential and those logarithmic expressions. So those themes are mapped beautifully in integrated Math 1, 2, and 3. And then you
We'd
can see
love
that.
for you to light up the chat with what, if you're an integrated or a traditional, go ahead and drop that in the chat and for Yost to reference.
All right. So, all right. Appreciate your comment there, Miguel. Preparing all grade levels for an 11th grade assessment is the biggest challenge. And so one of the ways to try to alleviate some of that challenge is to understand the pathway. And so in the orange here, the orange is very similar to what we just described in the blue, but this is the traditional pathway. And you can see how in the orange slides, ASSE1 is showing up in Algebra 1, Algebra 2. And in fact, there's subcategories of 1A and 1B. And then also SSE2 shows up also in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. I'm not going to go into all the details on the content-specific emphasis, but you can see how there is overlap with ASSE1 being emphasized in Algebra 1 versus Algebra 2. And so working through this blueprint and coming to this realization, at least answered this question: which standard of those clusters are showing up in which course? So then the next question comes along, which is here. Let's take it to more of a instructional point of view. Let's get day to day with the kids. So we're following along with this theme for D. That's a cluster D. That's interpret the structure of expressions. And remember, that has like at least 3 standards underneath. Inside of the Next Gen Math platform, this is what we've done. What we've done is this. We've taken ASSE, seeing structure and expressions, and then we've listed the stems that are associated with it. So there are the stems that are associated with it. What that means is those are the questions that we'd expect kids to understand in either an Algebra 1 course or an Algebra 2 course, to understand the rigor and the context of not only the standard, but how they may need to apply it and calibrate it towards when you take that spring test. So this is an example of interpret the structure of expressions. Here's another one with E, just following along with that same theme. That same theme, we have write expressions in equivalent form to solve problems. That theme continues again right there in the platform. Write expressions in equivalent forms to solve problems. All those rounded rectangles, when we get in the platform, you'll see that those represent question stems that are targeted exactly at that standard. And not only is it targeted exactly at that standard, we go to the next step, is that it's course specific related. And then cluster F, perform arithmetic operations and polynomials. This one's only in Algebra 2. And we have that same flow there. So big idea with the green prints and the blueprints is this. The green print is what SBAC provided. Our blueprints are telling us which courses those clusters will show up in. But not only that, the platform does this. It'll tell you the specific stems and questions which will reside in each course. But there's a treat. There's a big treat inside the platform. And we're going to get in there in a moment. It's going to answer your question directly. Miguel, where it says preparing all grade levels for an 11th grade assessment is the biggest challenge. That was the driver towards one area in the platform, and we're going to reveal that in just a moment. So, Erin, are you going to take over at this point?
I'll take it away. You can see my screen, right?
Yes.
All right, great. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually in the NextGen Math platform. I'm going to go to this drop down and know that we support kindergarten all the way up to through integrated math 3. And of course, if you're traditional, we have algebra 1, algebra 2, and geometry. What I'd like to speak to first is that 11th grade claim 1, right? Because we called out that challenge. A student may not have seen this math for 3 years, 2 or 3 years. And so the question is, how can we prepare them for success? And that's when we can turn to NextGen Math. I'd like to point out first that everything in our system is calibrated or color coded by major and supporting standards. Where do we get this designation? Directly from your California frameworks or your SBAC blueprints that Yoast likes to call green prints. So when I look here, I can see that I have my domain and I have my targets. We were looking at targets just a moment ago on those SBAC blueprints. And then as we looked at the slide, we could see the rounded rectangles. Now that we're live in the platform, as I hover over, you can see that each one of these rounded rectangles is associated with a question stem. Not only that, I know that these blue are supporting standards, so they're not going to be heavily emphasized. If I only have this much time to prepare my kids for this assessment, I won't be spending as much time in the blue. I definitely want to make sure that I'm hitting those major standards. So I'm going to come down here and just share a couple of different standards with you. I really like the idea of this REI, and it's a major standard. As I hover over, you're going to see the variety of question stems. Stems, great. What I really need is content. I need to know if my kids are still understanding this math, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm dragging and dropping questions into my question builder, and I just created a quick check or maybe a formative assessment. If I wanted additional question stems, all I need to do is hit this plus. I added two additional question stems, and I'm going to go up to my print to share what we just created. And here it is. Again, the academic language, the formatting of that SBAC, the rigor, the vocabulary. Kids need exposure to that. So here we have it. This is our print version. And remember when I hit that plus because I wanted additional versions of the same question, you could see down here that question 4, 5, and 6 are intentionally added in for repetitive use of those question stems. And of course, there's an answer key. Now, here's what's going to happen. We already know, right? We're going to give this to our students and it's going to be like, oh, shoot, we need to do some reteaching. They don't remember these concepts. So what we've done is created the ability to refresh unlimited questions. So there's an algorithm. So if you keep an eye on question number 1, as I hit refresh, you'll see that that question stem stays true to SBAC rigor in its format, in its vocabulary. And I, as the teacher, have plenty of content to reteach my students until they're actually demonstrating mastery of this particular standard. I'm going to pause there briefly and see if you have any questions about what I just shared. Any questions? You can drop them in the chat or just open mic. We'll keep an eye in the chat because sometimes there's a delay on those questions loading in the chat. In the meantime, I'll hit this view in Espanol and notice that it did translate. Our translation is not Castilian Spanish, it's localized Spanish from Mexico, kind of Spanish that our kids are more likely to speak. Also to note, with each of these, there are AI lessons for students who need that support, and those can be pushed out and done in an asynchronous environment. Now, we also mentioned that we're really good at helping fill learning gaps. And this is a challenge for our teachers. Oftentimes, kids are struggling and they're not sure how to support. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a quick way to identify standards gaps. And basically, I'm going to hit this button and I'm going to sort it and remove any duplicates. This number right here, the first number is the grade level. So what I just effectively did is I mapped this algebra 1 standard all the way down to its root in 5th grade. Now think about the data, how rich the data is from this type of assessment. It's going to tell me exactly where the gaps are, and our teachers have access to a quick tier 2 button that will allow a reteach of the standard. So it's a direct path to getting back on to grade level. So that is our standards builder. And from here, Yoast is going to prepare some interactive graph samples for you and perhaps talk about a little bit about the data.
Yep. Okay, thanks, Aaron. I'm going to take over on the screen share.
Okay,
So
stopping share.
stop and share. Excellent. And then I am now going to share. It looks like allow. Go to my data. I'm going to keep the flow with the data, and we'll get to an interactive graph problem. So when we take a look at the data, I have this Algebra 2 coherence data that's following right in the theme of what Aaron just showed with being able to map down to grade level specific standards that support high school level. Here's some data, some classic scoreboard data. We're going to focus right here in the center with this grid. And with this activity that went out, it went out to 2 periods of Algebra 2. And at this time, we know there's a 50% score there. We're just going to focus on the 50%. Let's take a look at domains. What domains were they exposed to? Well, you can see there's a 5th grade domain. There's an 8th grade domain. We have an Algebra 2 and an Algebra 1 domains that are there as well. And so what we're seeing is that some mixed results within those domains. And we also have all the names of the kids right here. So you have all that information. Let's focus, instead of on domains, let's focus on the stems. What stems did they have challenges with and successes? Well, in 5th grade, they clearly understand how to plot points. That's important, because where we're trying to get to all the way over here in 8th grade, I'm sorry, in Algebra 2, is to be able to interpret this type of problem, which is basically rates of change across 2 different linear equations that they'll be matching up. That's really the goal of it. There's an 8th grade STEM. The kids know how to plot slope. And then we have an algebra problem here as well. So we can take a look at this in terms of the data, and this data can also be shared with other teachers, So that way, if you have support teachers, they could come in here right away as well. And so what we noticed is that we have a bunch of kids that need help with this particular STEM. This is the preview of the STEM. And then we also have the ability to look at other STEMs. Let's say this 8th grade STEM, and we'll preview. These 5 students need help with that particular problem. And this is where Aaron was focusing, where we can assign additional questions, but for the purposes of teaching and reteaching as well. So we do a lot of the heavy work of being able to grab that data very seamlessly, and then to be able to collect groups of kids so that we can reteach. So that's just going off of that data piece and building that coherence map that Aaron focused on earlier was relatively seamless. So I'm going to go now in the platform, and I'm going to show off a couple of the graphing stems that we have, some of the graphing stems that we have available to you. Let's go ahead and focus right here. And so this problem is all about a car has already traveled 50 miles, is now moving at a constant speed, 10 miles an hour. For our content experts, we know that's going to be the classic linear equation, y equals mx plus b. And so if we students have the ability to plot some points, notice that we have the first point, which is the y-intercept. But as I start moving the cursor around, we already start to seeing the direction of the line. I think I find this actually relatively exciting because it allows kids to see where that line's already headed before they commit. And then I can commit and click check answer. And sure enough, we have that correct answer. So we do have that interactive graphing tool that is available for our students as well, along with that robust data piece that's there. So Aaron, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Okie dokie. Grabbing the screen share.
Okay.
Okay, so just to summarize what we've covered today, we have definitely the ability to support teachers as they fill learning gaps. And what's really important is got data, now what? We have lots of data, but if we're not using it to respond to student needs, what's the point, right? And so the tier 2, tier 3 intervention really supports with that, building confidence with our students, and great opportunities to spiral review, especially for that 11th grade CASP assessment. And then also as a review, we're going to share this deck with you in case you want to share with colleagues. So we put these screenshots in to share the standards builder, how you can quickly build an assignments that are preparing kids for the rigor of the SBAC. You're able to get real-time data and then of course respond in real time to those needs. And this is a review of how you can identify those gaps in student learning so that teachers have a direct path to getting kids back on a grade level. Something that we didn't share but wanted to make you aware of is that we have an intervention program. I think it's kind of like a Math 180 where students go in, they do 29 lessons, and it's designed to get them back onto grade level. Very popular intervention program. Just want to share one story from summer. We had high school teachers use it for their incoming 9th graders. At the beginning, none of the students were actually performing at a met exceeded level. By the end of the program, they were met exceeded. They were ready for grade level content, which is very beneficial. So this is all put together, and teachers just go through the intervention lessons. And so another summary, this is just a list of all of the various resources that we offer our high school. If you're interested, we are providing free pilots. Your teachers get trained. We roster your students. We can use the platform in our classrooms, see how it works for our students, and then make a determination from there. So all you need to do is scan that QR code, put your information in, and somebody will contact you to get you started. And that is what we have for you today. Well, spot on 10:30. Any questions? Thanks so much for your time, and we look forward to hearing from you. Have a great day.